Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope all is well, and I hope you enjoyed yesterday's video. Today, we're reading There's Nothing Safe About Deer Hunting in the Alabama Forest by Adsweet. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. As a southern bumpkin who had grown up in the deep woods, well, more specifically, the middle of nowhere Alabama woods, I always get taken back to a very interesting chapter in my life. You see, as a kid, I had always marveled at how constant yet inconsistent the forest was. The ground always had critters frantically scurrying around the seemingly still leaves. The river kept a constant flow sourced from the loud and chaotic falls we had some miles away. The trees would sway side to side during the stormy seasons, yet stay rooted firmly on the ground. Their leaves would turn all sorts of colors only to disappear completely in the dead of winter. Yep, nothing was safe from change. Come to think of it, strange as it was, even the mannequins changed out there. Now, folks, if you think that sentence seemed a little out of place in my story, imagine how it was for me seeing them for the first time. I remember first spotting them when I was around 6 years old. I barely reached up to my father's knees, but I had finally learned how to stop tripping over my own two left feet, and Pa felt it was safe enough to let me take a hike with him for the first time. As a girl, the wilderness fascinated me and scared me, but I had never once assumed that I would find mannequins in the forest. I could be out there with Pa looking for frogs or trying to find some kindling for our fireplace, and then, surprise, a random mannequin not too far from the house would be there waiting for us. Honestly, I use the term mannequins freely, but originally, they were more like bodies. Kinda like the ones that Ma used to use to drape fabric over whenever she would make some new clothes. Damned kids and their pranks! Scowling Pa would grip the strap attached to his rifle and scooted me alongside in the opposite direction from where we came from. "Pay them no mind," he said. "Poppy's got a gun." I remember taking my Pa's hand and dwelling on that comment till we got home. I thought it was pretty silly, that he wanted to shoot something found in Mama's old sewing room. Why didn't he just put them somewhere else? Or at least kick them down? They weren't menacing, but they sure did startle me sometimes. They always seemed to be everywhere in the woods, almost as if they were following us. Then again, thinking about it some more, it wasn't really a surprise. Lord knows I loved him, but my Pa was a really irresponsible guy. Being the only child Mama could give him before her death, God rest her soul, he was determined to raise me right. He wanted me to be a gun-toting, rough-and-tumble country kid who could hunt, as well as pick a fight and win it. Admittedly, I had formed some complex because of it, always wondering if, just maybe, Papa would have been better off with a boy. Let's just say I was desperate to gain his approval. At the ripe old age of 7, he put a firearm in my hands. "You see this, Cricket? This is a Ruger." He'd beam. Back then, that rifle had felt too heavy for my string bean arms to hold. I could barely keep it on my lap. "This rifle has been in our family for a long time, kept a lot of us safe and fed, and when you're a little older, I'm going to teach you how to hunt with it. Deer season is where we'll start." I furrowed my brow and looked around the cabin and rested my eyes on the mounted buck head above the fireplace. "I don't think I can do it, Pa. Sweet little deer?" "They ain't little," Pa retorted, "and they ain't sweet. You gotta learn how to defend yourself out there. Deer come in all shapes and sizes." I realized then that it was useless to protest. Pa had made up his own mind, and even at 7, I knew that he was a stubborn man. There was no winning this battle, so, at the time, I just nodded my head and sadly agreed. Eventually, when I turned 12, Pa deemed me ready, mostly because as a stocky kid, I could hold on to that rifle. The excitement in my belly bubbling up as he led me out back and stood me in front of the shed made me giddy. He had never allowed me in there. When he flung open those doors, my eyes went as big as saucer plates. A deer right in the garage. It was still doe-eyed and staring right back at me. I walked up to it and Pa stopped me. "Hold your horses, Cricket. It's not real," Pa said. "It's a decoy. Although it is a bit different from the ones you see in the store." He walked up to the deer. "Those are plastic, fake as they come." He slapped a hand along its back. "This one here is stuffed with cotton. We call it taxidermy." He beamed. "I'd like to think that deer are a little smarter than what we give them credit for. I know that most of them can spot these fake things a mile away. This here doe, well, it's never failed me, and we're gonna use it as bait for when we go hunting. We're gonna teach you to shoot." As soon as he said that, a familiar feeling of dread washed over me. I didn't want to kill anything, but I wasn't about to make Pa upset. The hunting grounds were beautiful. Pa had just found a bush to hide behind and a great clearing that he mentioned was known for buck sightings. "Let me just set this up," he said. He set the fake doe on the sunny area of the clearing. "Gotta make sure the doe doesn't fall over if the buck, hugs them." I rolled my eyes. He got out some ground anchors and rope and got to work rooting her firmly to the spot. After scattering some leaves to hide the materials, Dad smiled. "Perfect." He looked back at me. "Let's go hunting." The first day of hunting was uneventful. The first round of bucks had mistakenly, or rather, correctly assumed the doe was a threat and went in for the attack, which wouldn't have been a problem had my hands not been so shaky. I couldn't exactly hit a moving target yet, much less an aggressive-looking one. Every time I'd reluctantly put my gun down, Pa would say, "It's okay, we'll get him next time." As the sun went down, every missed kill left me feeling disappointed. Pa was determined though. No matter how tired he looked, he would repeat the same thing. "It's okay, we'll get him next time," followed by a condescending pat on the back. Failed shot after failed shot, and shell after shell, there Pa would be, reassuring me that we definitely got him next time. These ritualistic embarrassments would have kept going on for about 3 weeks. Some days, we'd have to start all over and move to a new spot because a mannequin appeared on our preferred clearing. Those were the worst. Pa would get angry and we'd have to lug that doe further away from where we parked, all because of those stupid, then department store-looking mannequins. By the end of it, with that constant runaround and the failed hunting trips, I had managed to only scare away several animals and graze too many trees. I had just about had it. On the last day of my 3rd week, I remember walking back to the car, hanging my head and kicking the dirt beneath my feet. Pa patted my back. "It's okay, we'll get him next time." I could feel the blood boiling in my skin. "I'm tired of this, Pa," I said. "I'm just not a hunter," Pa sighed. "Not yet, but you will be. We'll get him next time." "Stop saying that. No, we won't," I screamed. "We won't ever get him because I can't use this thing to save my life." I held my Ruger out in front of me. My father's eyes scanned mine, his face stone cold. "Put that back on you. Don't ever take it off out here, do you understand? And don't keep saying you won't kill. You have to learn how to protect yourself." "I'm freaking 12, and you're forcing me to shoot animals, so I can learn how to use this thing?" I gripped the weapon hard. "Guess what? I don't want it." I threw the gun towards my father. My dad, not expecting it, failed to angle himself, and the steel ended up clocking him square in the nose. "God damn it!" Blood started to trickle out of his nose where the gun had landed. It wasn't long before the yellow leaves at his feet started turning crimson red. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it, Pa." The pain I felt grow on my cheek after Dad had slapped me wasn't as bad as the shame I felt from him saying, "Kid, it's time you grow the hell up. It's an eat or be eaten world out there." He shoved the gun into my hands, and I looked up at him. "Just because you couldn't stop Mom from dying doesn't mean I have to pay for it." You know, if your mama saw you now, I know she'd be a real letdown." He snapped. Without remark being enough, I ran for the woods anywhere away from him. I ran and ran, ignoring my dad's cries for me to come back. I didn't know if Dad wanted to give me space, or if I managed to lose him. I don't even know if he followed me. I certainly couldn't hear him chasing me through my running. I collapsed onto the dirt, wondering if he would leave me out there, wondering if maybe I deserved it. I wiped my tear-stained cheeks and sprawled out down on the ground, looking up at the sky. I was sure Mama was let down by me, which only made me cry some more for a good while. After about 10 minutes of self-pity, I got that familiar feeling of nausea most kids get. After not eating and running about half a mile through forest, I rubbed my belly. We hadn't eaten since this morning, and I closed my eyes. Thinking back, if I remember correctly, I think we passed a berry bush on the way to the hunt grounds. "That's a mulberry bush, kid," Dad had told me. "If you ever get hungry, it's safe to enjoy them for a little snack. Just wash them first." I looked around. The bush couldn't have been that far from where I was. Unfortunately, 15 minutes later of endless wandering and searching had me realize that I was completely and utterly lost. Where was my dad? Had he really left me there? I started picking up my pace through the woods and glanced down at my watch. 5 p.m. It was starting to get dark. I tried brushing away the fear by focusing on something else. I started looking at the clouds as I walked. Hopefully, I would make my way out of the thick wilderness and onto a campsite. Hopefully, there would be people there. Hopefully, there would be food. Was Daddy looking for me? He must be worried. I should apologize when I find him. I strained my eyes ahead of me, searching for a clearing. I gasped when I saw him. Out ahead, about 40 feet away from me, was a person. I ran towards them, waving my arms and screaming in the loudest voice I could muster, "Please wait, please!" Desperately, trying to get their attention. Thankfully, they seemed to be preoccupied with whatever they were looking at. When I was close enough, I struggled to catch my breath, grasping for air, and stumbled onto the ground. "I'm glad I caught you," I gasped, as I struggled to catch my breath, but looking up to my dismay was yet another mannequin. I felt my cheeks growing hot. I slammed my hands down on the ground in frustration. Of course it was. It always is. I rolled my eyes and threw down my gun in disgust. How could I mistake a mannequin for a person? I lifted my head, and then the realization kicked in. I mistook a mannequin for a person. I had never done that before. I looked at it again. This was a really convincing one. They had never looked this real before. I tilted my head and observed it a little more closely. It was standing in some kind of awkward mid-motion gesture with its right hand raised up as if to say hello, beaming this toothy, half-open smile. Honestly, this one had to be the best one yet. Their hair was so realistic, not like the horsehair you see some wigs made out of. It looked so fine and wispy. The teeth were naturally crooked and had a slightly yellow tinge to them. The gums showed a glossy sheen. There were cracks on the lips and its tongue. Every pore on its face was visible. It even had little veins on the side of its nose. I examined his body, and strangely enough, the clothes he wore looked more like he was ready to go to some highfalutin restaurant than roughing it in the woods. He looked like some kind of caricature. I laughed at the uncanniness of it all. Ironic that the fakest thing about the mannequin was its outfit. Well, that, and it also hadn't moved the entire time I stared at it. But still, it looked so human. What the heck is this? I stepped closer, slightly freaked out and slightly wanting to get a feel of it. It couldn't be real. No way. I wasn't 5 feet away from that thing before I felt something tug me back. I turned around to see Pa's angry face. "What the hell did I tell you about not having your gun on you?" I felt the tears well up in my eyes. "Pap!" Pa pointed to the muffs as he held the gun. "Put them on! Put them on!" Alarmed, I raised my muffs to my ears. Bam! Daddy fired 5 shots into seemingly nowhere deep in the forest, with the last one blasting the mannequin. "What are you doing?" I cried. He grabbed my hand, and with a panic I'd never seen him in before, threw both of our muffs on the ground as we ran. I swiveled my head back to the mannequin. It miraculously hadn't fallen over from the blast. That half-open smile now gone as its jaw had been blown clean off. Pieces of flesh were hanging on below its nose. It didn't look like a mannequin anymore. I could see the white stuff was scattered all over the leaves at its feet. I saw more, falling out of the hole from its upper jaw. It took 12 minutes of non-stop running before Pa and I made it out of the woods and back into the truck. The entire time I saw Pa frantically looking back throughout our surroundings. He could barely get the key in the lock with how bad his hand was shaking. After he tossed me in the truck, he got in, slammed his door shut, started the engine, and pressed on the pedal with a frantic desperation. Driving out of the forest and swerving around the mountains at a speed that terrified me. "Pa, please slow down, you're gonna kill us!" I screamed. Pa looked at me for a second. "Didn't you hear it?" The look on Pa's frantic, wild eyes chilled me to my core, and I'll never forget them. I sat there and tried to remember what I had at the time, thought was just my imagination as we ran away. Maybe my muffs hadn't been on right when Pa fired his gun and my ears had played tricks on me. But after Pa had ripped off our muffs, when we were running away, I could have sworn I heard someone say something deep in those bushes. "Don't worry, we'll get them next time." Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.